You guys work with farmers directly in the production of organic food. What are you hearing from farmers?
Yeah, so
how bad is the environment?
Yeah, we speak with a lot of farmers, and quite frankly, they've been talking about this for decades, right? The changes in the soil, the changes in the climate. They're less worried about the political realities of climate change. They're more worried about the direct impact that it has on them year to year, right? Agriculture is an investment up front that farmers make in their land, and they rely on markets at the end of the day to be able to procure that investment. And so what happens often year to year is that variability, that lack of output because of some of the climate issues that they're seeing directly impact their ability to continue to invest. And it puts a lot of fear and a doubt in whether or not the agricultural space is something that they can continue in generation to generation.
A lot of economic pressure.
They're not denying it.
No, not at all.
So, all right. And Gina just talked a lot about what the government is trying to do, Build Back Better, in terms of climate legislation and spending. What do you think, Rachel, that the government could do that really would help your space, the organic space, the farming space?
Yeah. There's so many things, because ultimately people can vote with their dollars. People can put their their money where their mouth is. But these problems have to be solved at the corporate and systemic level. There's so much research that needs to be done on regenerative agriculture, on agriculture and climate change that the government needs to invest in. And I think about farm subsidies where soy, wheat, corn are where the government is still putting their money after all these years, and the downstream effects of those investments, where if we took that money and put it towards investment and research in regenerative agriculture, we would be in a whole different place.
I'd also love to say there's some basic oversight and sort of action of the systems within government that we can push for. So, for example, we were down in Organic Week a couple weeks back, and there's a bill that right now is being pushed called the Continuous Improvement and Accountability Act for Organic that would basically just ensure a 20-year backlog of recommendations and changes to how organic is managed and overseen go into effect, or at least get reviewed. And that type of a backlog is exactly why I think the farming community, the ag space, hasn't been able to make more progress, because government isn't stepping up and even doing the fundamentals, let alone the investments that Rachel's talking about.
So you're saying there's a backlog of farmers who want to produce organically, and they just need to be signed off on and approved?
More so the oversight of the organic certification process, something that means a lot to consumers, right? You need to have trust in that. So there's a backlog of recommendations that would make the oversight and the process of becoming organic certified or maintaining it.
This is the Green Summit, right? And
yes.
So we're thinking about things that impact the environment. Why is organic farming, why is regenerative farming, which is what you guys are focusing on, why is this so important? And part of understanding this is understanding exactly what regenerative farming is about versus conventional farming.
Absolutely. I mean, regenerative agriculture, just to level set, is bringing our soil back to a place where Mother Nature can do what Mother Nature does. Right. It takes a lot of hubris for us as a society to say, like, oh, we can do better than Mother Nature. We can use fungicides and pesticides and fertilizers to do something better. So it's kind of bringing agriculture, bringing our soil back to a place where it can sustain human life on this planet for future generations.
Yeah, I would just say the other thing that's really important to know is that this is not new. Right. Regenerative agriculture is certainly—
Isn't it kind of what farmers did way
back when? Yeah, and it's about a holistic approach to, as Rachel said, both soil management and the farm management, right? The people on the land as well.
Can we scale it up? I mean, just looking at some of the statistics in terms of agriculture and what the contribution to the economy, but so much is done conventionally. Can we scale it up?
Yes, I think there's a big misnomer that says, organic agriculture and regenerative agriculture can't be scaled. But the truth is, many farmers are doing this already. Yeah. And so it's not to say that it can't be scaled, but
why aren't more then?
Because
organic is, what was the statistic you shared with me?
So food that we eat is 1% of U.S. agriculture, and only 1% of that is organic.
So a really small amount. So why aren't more doing it?
It's expensive and unproven. And so you think about what the farming community is looking for, right? We do go out of our way to make sure we listen first, right? We're not going to tell people what they should do. We're going to listen. And what's amazing to see is in a more regional, local way, there are farmers that are building community around applying these regenerative practices and proving to themselves that it makes a difference, right? And so how do you go to a farming community that is, razor thin margins already and say, we need you to spend more to invest? This might take 5, 10 years to, get to the outputs you need. That's where businesses and government need to step in and incentivize that transition.
And that's really where we play a role, right? So we have a belief that if everybody eats more fruits and vegetables every single day, that this is something that is objectively good for humans and objectively good for the planet. But not all fruits and vegetables are grown the same way. And they have to be grown in a way that gives back to the soil, that puts us all in a better position. So giving those farmers a hand and saying that we will help support you through the 3-year transition from conventional to organic, which comprises of a bunch of different processes that I won't go into, but
it's 3 years.
It's a 3-year process.
And what's the cost? Because you said it's expensive. Do we have
It depends on the commodity, it depends on the region, but it is definitely higher cost. And that's where there is generally a premium on organic agriculture on the end result. But for a farmer who's making that transition, for that 3 years, they're farming organically, the food is organic, and yet they're unable to sell at that premium. And so what we're doing, and we're testing out this model and scaling it, is stepping in and actually paying a premium on the transitional product, even during that process, and giving them that extra oomph to say, we're here for you, we got you.
All right, so I jumped in the middle. So this is Daily Harvest.
Hi.
So if you're not familiar, Rachel, tell us about your backstory and what you guys are doing and why you got into this 5 years ago.
Yeah. At Daily Harvest, we really believe that we need to remove the friction between the intent of eating more fruits and vegetables every day and actually doing it for the benefit of people and planet. And as I said, all fruits and vegetables are not grown the same way. So we really invest at the farmer level, directly with them, thinking about farmer livelihoods, thinking about regenerative agriculture, thinking about education, thinking about research, with a series of different models that we're hoping we can prove work at scale, and making it so easy from a consumer perspective to then consume those fruits and vegetables. So Daily Harvest delivers frozen, organic, ready to eat meals across 11 different collections and eating occasions directly to your door. And everything is ready to prep in minutes. And that is one of the major barriers. People don't know what tastes good. People don't know how to make them. You've got produce rotting in your refrigerator. There's so many consumer challenges as well. So we really think about how do we kind of create a new system that works better and solves for people and planet.
One of the really cool things about the way we're set up as well is Rachel challenged us as a team many years ago to build the supply chain that could support that nimbleness.
Right.
And so, we talk a lot about the agricultural side, but we've also developed a culinary approach that allows us to actually go to farmers and ask them what they want to grow. Right? So the normal model of R&D where you develop something in a lab, your procurement function goes out and then tries to purchase those ingredients with a specific specification, we've really flipped that model on its head and said, okay, what are the types of biodiverse, a range of different agricultural commodities that we want to incorporate, and then our culinary team does the work.
But
they
Rick,
transform that.
What if a farmer says, I don't know, pick a vegetable. Is there a vegetable somebody hates? What? Okra. Sorry.
Brussels sprouts is a good example.
Favorites.
People love Brussels sprouts.
I love Brussels sprouts. But so what if they're like, the farmer's like, I want to do this. And you go back to your team and your chefs and they're like, you put stuff out on the platform and nobody buys it.
Yeah.
So how do you?
So therein lies like our entire business model's secret sauce.
Yeah.
So we make our food with the people who eat it and the people who grow it. So what we've done is we use machine learning to really understand at an intimate level what customers want to eat, because taste is one of the main barriers between the intent and action of eating more fruits and vegetables every day. Not everyone wants to eat their broccoli or their lima beans or their okra, and that's okay. So we try to remove the barrier of taste first, and we make food for individuals and not averages. And then,
Wait, so how do you do that and be profitable and grow your business?
Yeah.
That sounds expensive.
So it comes down to variety. We have a ton of variety, and it comes down to agility.
Yeah.
So the other part of it is we make our food with people who grow it. So we go with our farmers. Ricky's entire team is building these really strong relationships with farmers who are looking into things like, how do I make money from a cover crop, which is a part of regenerative agriculture. So one of the principles of regenerative agriculture is making sure that the soil is not exposed. So a lot of farms spend most of the year exposed to the elements. So it's making use of that soil for other times a year, which adds to the microbiome of that soil in really substantive ways. So we make our food.
It's giving back.
It gives back to the soil. Yeah, and doesn't erode all of the carbon holding top layer of our soil, which is, I mean, a third of the carbon in our environment comes from agriculture.
I think it's worth stating, because I think it seems obvious, but it may not be, that the reason we use so many chemicals in conventional farming is because those chemicals, those nutrients, don't exist in the soil today. And so we're putting more and more and more chemical nutrients into the system, putting more and more chemical pesticides into the system to weed off these, other things that are growing. And in reality, that's the way the soil normally works, right? It normally works in a more, complex system.
What's it like coming up against the big ag system, the existing infrastructure? And part of ag is also the chemical industry, right? That's so involved in terms of fertilizer and so on. You and I, the three of us, have been talking a lot about Elon Musk. Like him or not, he's in the news a lot, always is. But what's interesting is he really poked the bear when it came to electric vehicles. Yeah. And everybody was writing him off. But look at what he has done in upending the production of electric vehicles, whether it's GM, whether it's Ford, pick your automaker. But what's it like for you guys, who are a small player, coming up against the existing farming system and structure?
It's really tough. I mean, I think the stat is 95% of our food comes from 10 companies, which is
and
are they taking your phone call? But I'm wondering how much you have to be involved with someone like that to help move the needle.
Yeah, I think
and then help the environment.
This is where our long-term view comes in, and I think this is where the partnerships we're building on the ground come in. We just announced last week a 5-year partnership with our almond supplier and a number of other brands, investing in a 5-year study that's applying different regenerative practices to the land and actually validating the impact that it has. And so when you talk about coming up against big ag, what we're doing is we're building the data, and we're building the partnerships, and we're building the credibility to actually say, hey, there is a better way, right? Just screaming there's a better way without anything to back it up doesn't get you very far. And so I think, similar to the example you gave with Elon, there's some prove it, and then, build it, they will come, maybe, so, a little bit like that. So I think that's what we're looking to do.
And if we can show that it works, big food's going to pay attention.
So another flip side of that is ESG, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's been so much investor money. I mean, you guys all know the numbers. Like, everybody wants it, so many investors, and yet we're going through this moment in time where people want transparency and clarity about, when I make an ESG investment, wait, I'm in Exxon or I'm in whatever.
Right.
Forgive me, Exxon, I'm just singling it out. But I mean, how can that investor money, and talk to us about your investors, like what they want in terms of clarity, transparency. Are you saying, you've been doing this for 5 years, are they requiring more out of you to know that this really is kind of a clean, green investment?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with value-aligned investors. You can't do much without that.
Would you not take an investor that isn't aligned with what you
No, I've turned down a lot of checks, which as a startup founder is not an easy thing to do. But we've turned away a lot of money. And it really is about our long view, right? The VC model is set up for quick returns, explosive growth, quick returns. And we have a really long-term approach to what we're doing, and the investments that we're making will not pay off immediately. Yes, we have amazing growth, which shows that there's demand from consumers, but really thinking about, how do we rewrite the system? How do we show that there's a different way? That's the long game. And when you think about a lot of public companies in the food space, again, those 10, and you think about how the street is rewarding them for paying out dividends, margin accretion, it's very hard to not greenwash and to not health wash and to make big change that's going to have an impact.
Well, let me just follow, Rachel, because I think you guys hit unicorn status. Yeah. One of our reporters, Jillian Tan, wrote about it late last year with another round, a funding round. I am curious, does it make you want to stay private for longer? Yeah. Because it does give you that luxury of kind of doing what you want to do that 5-year research that
Yeah,
you might not
it
have
does.
as a public company.
It absolutely does. And we've always been focused on capital efficiency, which is also helpful in that environment. It allows you to stay private longer, and it allows you to roll up your sleeves and do the work that needs to be done to show that there's a different way.
So tell us about your platform, who's using it? Because it's great to hear what you guys are doing, but accessibility and getting it out to more people. So tell us about who uses your platform.
Yeah, so people are often surprised to hear that our population of consumers or customers actually track the U.S. population within 1 percentage point on almost all demographic cuts, which is pretty wild. So think of
Age, diversity, and whichever way you cut it.
all of it. Urbanacity, like people will, we're in New York. A lot of people will say like, oh yeah, it's a coastal business. I'm like, well, there is population density there, so sure. But our platform is really broad, and because we make our food with the people who eat it and grow it, being able to cater to all of their tastes is one of the differentiating points of the business, because the way big food generally makes food is they make food for averages, and then they add a bunch of salt and sugar, which are addictive substances, to the food, right? But when you're trying to make fruits and vegetables in their unadulterated form taste good to everybody, that's really where our model of making food for individuals comes in, and the personalization required, and our platform as a whole being able to make food for individuals is so differentiated.
I think it's also a testament to the way we've grown the portfolio, right? Not just in the flavor profile direction, but as Rachel mentioned, 11 different categories, soon to be 12.
Across day parts, yes.
Yeah.
We have a big launch coming tomorrow.
So
Do you want to share it?
Yeah, do you want to go in?
No, you too. Oh, okay, I'll start, then you go.
start.
We haven't talked about it yet,
I know.
so I'm like, I don't know, nervous. But so we're launching our version of plant-based meat tomorrow.
You are?
Yes, and it is hugely different because it is grown in the ground, grown in the earth.
You can clap.
Thank you.
Right, so say it again. What is it?
So it's grown in the ground and not in a lab, which is the key differentiator. So really thinking about our mission for the benefit of people and planet, we want to make sure that it benefits both. A lot of the plant-based meats out there, while there is the best of intentions, everybody who's trying to get people to eat more plants, like, kudos to you. But a lot of the ingredients used in those recipes,
They're not that healthy.
They're not
we
healthy.
had that conversation and that debate with the CEOs of those companies.
I like
all
to
the time.
say it's modern margarine. Like, we've been there, we've done that. Why are we doing this again?
Does anybody use margarine anymore?
But we're doing it again.
Yeah.
So we're launching our own plant-based meat tomorrow.
Wow.
And you see the ingredients. You see lentils. You see seeds. You see these amazing natural sources of protein that are adding to biodiversity, adding to cover crop land coverage, and adding in a substantive way to human health.
Do you have any questions? Yeah, Meg.
Are organics expensive when AG subsidies for non-organics are factored in, or the costs of poor health outcomes which impact labor are considered?
I think that's a great question. I think when we look at the costs of agricultural commodities or anything that people purchase, right, we only tend to focus on what's the price at the grocery store. And I think that's why we're so committed to a different way, because the end results of the impact that the current system has had on human health, right? And we know the state of the country and the state of the world in terms of the health challenges that exist, the strain that has on the healthcare system, the strain that has honestly on education and growth in communities, right? When you're eating the wrong food, it is shown that it has a negative output on your growth, early stage in particular. So I think it's a great question. How you actually do that full cost accounting of the different models is hard. And so a lot of what we are focused on, again, is proving the outcomes as opposed to suggesting the alternative that exists today is bad. I think people generally know that. It's now about proving the alternative.
What about the price point in terms of accessibility? Like, you're working with farmers, so that's one thing you're thinking about in terms of community and increasing the accessibility. But often we talk about organic food or healthier food, it's more expensive.
Yeah.
And so it makes it inaccessible to so much of our population.
Absolutely. Today. So where we really focus is on transitional organic. And the reason that's so important is because after farmers actually made that transition from conventional to organic, they can have higher yields. They can make more money. It's like wonderful for their business models. But during that 3-year period, it's rough. So
how quickly do they recoup their investment?
Well, so it depends. Again, it's
Okay.
so, with ag, it's always it depends, unfortunately. But
which is why it's so hard to quantify a lot of
Yeah.
these.
And that's why we're stepping in the models we're using, where we're saying, let us actually help you through that
So
transition
are you
period.
helping financially,
Correct.
which is very much like what Whole Foods did in terms of a lot of its suppliers? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, what we're actually doing is committing financially in different ways, but specifically in actually purchasing of that raw material that
Creating
they're
a market
planting.
for it.
Okay.
Correct.
got it.
It's the market that's
So
missing.
they've got guaranteed.
Money is helpful, right? I think, there's no question that as we talk to some of that community, they'll talk about needing more funding and needing more investment, but it's the market that's missing.
So I cut you off though in accessibility.
Yes.
In terms of price
Yes,
points.
so it really is a supply-demand issue. So the more supply of organic we can create, the lower those prices will get
it's
over time.
basic
So
economics.
as I said, it's the long game for us. We know that like organic is expensive and regenerative is expensive because it's such a small, it's 1% of 1%
Yeah.
today. So if we can make those investments, like we know that it is expensive today, and there's no hiding it. There's no need to, but we're talking about how over time we bring the cost down and make it more accessible.
The other thing I'd add here is I think that we often, again, focus on the end consumer, and we don't focus enough on the farming community. And so, another program we've launched in the last year is a multi-year partnership with the American Farmland Trust and CCOF, investing in underserved, underrepresented farmers in California to make sure that they can maintain access to their land, to actually have the tools and the services that they need.
This is the upstream.
This is upstream,
But
but
you guys are
We're focusing upstream, and what's so great is the more we scale, the more we grow, the more good we can do. And this is another example. Do you want to?
no, I would just argue
Yeah.
that it is upstream, and it also is directly impacting people
Right.
that are also consumers.
Which is a good
and so
point.
those consumers now are more stable so that they can eat better. They can eat the food that they're growing, quite frankly.
Right. Meg, wait, I'm going to take another question
of
from the audience. Go ahead.
Do you know the carbon impact of the new plant-based meat that you have created? Will you be performing a life cycle analysis, or has that already been done?
It's a great question. We have not completed, and we are evaluating.
In the process.
One thing we also, again, the
This
comparisons.
is an important part of the process.
It is, and
Very.
the comparisons are helpful, but really more for us as a business, and Rachel's been really clear about this from day one, more for us to challenge ourselves. We're not in it to be able to say, oh, us versus them, right? Like to Rachel's point, we have a lot of respect for the other businesses that are trying and doing other things. We have a particular ethos and a belief on what's the best approach. But yeah, we will be doing more rigorous assessment to say, what is the impact of this?
One more?
How are you advancing accessibility and consumer education?
Wait, repeat the question. They couldn't hear.
How are you advancing accessibility and consumer education?
How are you advancing accessibility and consumer education?
Yeah, so this is hard. People don't want to necessarily read about more like doom and gloom, right? There's enough of it in our world today,
Yeah.
and it's not clickbait. So thinking about how we get people to, how we open consumers' eyes to some of the solutions. There's a feeling of hopelessness. Well, like here's some very concrete steps that we can take. But the way that we've done it, if you've ever seen the Daily Harvest brand, is it's very light. And that is really by design. We try to educate consumers in a way that doesn't feel like taking your medicine, that feels very light and approachable and fun. And that's really the approach that we've taken, and it's worked. I mean, even just the, we are frozen, and that is for so many reasons. Food waste, convenience, I could go on and on, but I'm not going to.
But you do it at a certain point where the peak nutrients are there, and
Correct.
more nutrients. Like there's so many reasons, and like even that took a lot of education. We came into a market where everybody associated frozen food with dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and frozen pizza.
yeah,
So
frozen string beans from years ago.
totally, and we've made such an impact. Like people are always like, "Oh, the frozen market's on fire," and I'm like, sure, but we've been like preaching the gospel for years, and it's cutting through because of the way that we're doing it. You know, through TikTok, through Instagram, through all of these really approachable formats, which make it more fun.
I'd also say my favorite thing to see from our consumers is their excitement and enthusiasm for ingredients they've never heard of, and not in the bad way, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of that. Oh, because it's a new
What is this
variety of
word with
sweet
so many
potato.
different syllables?
Right, and so I think we see that time and time again, that part of that engagement is around just the excitement in the food you're eating and an interest in, oh, wow, that ingredient combination with that's the hook, right? Then you get them in and you can talk to them more about agricultural practices and things like that.
And that Murasaki sweet potato that I think Ricky is alluding to, you know, is part of the biodiversity puzzle.